Hello and welcome back, everybody. Today we are going to be talking about a video that went a little bit viral on my TikTok account, and I'm actually going to pull up that TikTok post right now, so I can read a comment that I got on that video. But basically, what I was talking about is I talked about the 5 things we learned. So if you're coming from that video, thank you for joining us. But basically, there's this, as you probably know, there was the penalty with Joao Neves that was not given. And I want to talk about that and why, yes, it is a penalty. I don't agree with it. I really disagree with the call. I think that it is poor decision by the referee. I think it be okay. Let me take a step back. It's the right decision by the referee. It's a bad written rule, and I think that this is silly because it lacks a consistency with a lot of the things we're seeing right now in the Champions League and some of those penalties that were given in the semifinal. I mean, there were three, four penalty shouts that were and I think two or three of them are controversial. And I think, it's important that we talk about that. So let's take a step back. By the law, yes. So the law says a handball offense is not committed when a player is hit on the hand/arm by the ball, which has been played by a teammate, unless the ball goes directly into the opponent's goal or a player scores immediately afterwards, in which case a direct free kick is awarded to the other team. So obviously, Joao Neves, by the law, was not a handball. However, I think this rule is an entirely unjust rule. I think this is poor. I mean, let me just take a step back and look at the situation. I mean, Bayern are on the offensive. Joao Neves is able to, they're attacking very heavily. You have this ball go off a player's arm who's extended out. His arm is fully extended at the time of the foul, and it's just in the way, and he gets punished for it. There was a game recently. I don't know how recent, but Porto versus Boavista. Porto players pointing for his teammate to clear the ball. The ball is cleared and hits his arm. It is given as a penalty. I think that whether that right there is by the law the wrong call, but is it a rule that should be a penalty? I think that that's what I want to talk about today. I will say if the world was just and how I think would be fair for it, that penalty, the Ben White penalty and the Alphonso Davies penalty, all of the first leg, or the Ben White and Alphonso Davies of their first legs, respectively, and then this penalty should not be penalties. I think they all should all not be penalties. Let me be clear about that from the get-go. However, I do think that based on the fact that you're giving a ball that's hit off of a player onto their arm twice in the semifinals, you have to give one where the player's kicked it off of his own teammate's arm, because then PSG get the ball and then they're able to clear it out again, and there's no issue, and then all of the momentum that Bayern's been building is taken away because of this controversial decision. So when we look at the Ben White penalty, Ben White is reaching out with his leg, trying to make a block, and he has to keep his balance, so he extends his arm out to help keep his balance. The ball then strikes his hand, a ball that was going extremely wide of the goal, was not challenging Raya's goal at all, goes off his hand, unintentional, gets given a penalty because it is a handball. It's a very soft handball, in my opinion, and we see that given sometimes in the Premier League as well, very rarely in the Premier League, but I think it is a very soft penalty, nonetheless. And so I think that in and of itself is very similar to the Joao Neves because his arm's extended out. I think this one's a lot more unnatural because I don't know why Joao Neves extended his hand out. There was really no justification or reasoning for that. There was no balance issue, nothing like that. When I watched the video back, it looks like he just extends his arm out. I don't really understand why. I don't know if he was trying to get out of the way of the ball, and maybe he stuck his arm out in like a reaction, like he was trying to move his head and his body, and like he just left his arms out. I'm not sure, but I just think that how can you say a player trying to block a ball and his arm is being used for balance, and then another player who's just stuck his arm out and hit a ball coming towards him? I don't really see how you can say those two things are different. The next one is from a cross played in by Dembele on Alphonso Davies during the first leg. It's a total accidental handball, and I mean, when you're looking at the situation, and I'm probably going to put a screenshot of it here, Alphonso Davies went to block the ball, turned his head away from the action, gotten hit in the stomach or leg area, kind of that mid region, and then it bounces off that into his hand. And I just don't see a way that you can give that as a penalty either. I think that all three of these situations that we're talking about in this video are not penalties. And I think that we need to see some change in how the Champions League is officiating. And this isn't just because of an Arsenal penalty. Arsenal got away with it. I think that it's just kind of a poor standard set. I think we're seeing games this late in a tournament decided by penalties. And I'm concerned about the precedent that sets in uh, kind of football in general, in the Champions League, especially at that level, because we don't see these penalties given at the Premier League level. We don't see that Alphonso Davies one doesn't get given. The Ben White could go either way. I that's the one that I can see go either way as a trying to be as neutral as possible. And then the Joao Neves one, I think gets given as well in the Premier League just because he stuck his arm out for no reason. The rule says mentions a deliberate handball. There may have not been, he may have not been reaching out to touch the ball, but there is the deliberate stretching his arm out, and I think that should have been given. And so if we're basing it off of everything else that's happened, I think that if we're basing it off of the fact that Ben White and Davies penalty have been given, then I think it should be given. But the fact that I think that none of those three should be a penalty in reality. So I think there needs to be some sort of rule change, maybe some more, referee understanding of the rule. Not really understanding, but more referee decision in the rule. And maybe even if the referee has his own kind of way with it, he still decides, no, that's not enough for a penalty. That's not enough to make that decision in that game. And that's right. That's probably right. Or maybe he decides to stick with the decision that he made on field if he has a chance to go look back at it. Personally, I don't like seeing situations like that in games. I think that, they're very unjust a lot of times, and you just never want to see penalties be the decider. Even when you're watching games and they go 120 minutes, you really don't want it to come down to penalties because you want the best team to be rewarded for what they've done and what they've accomplished in the game. And so that's kind of all I wanted to talk about in this video. I'd love to continue this conversation in the comment section down below. Let me know what your thoughts are, and I'd love to keep this going. So I'll see you there.